Hey, everybody, welcome to Tony's Time. It's that time of the week. Arun, Shiva, that is Indian Cowboy Week 5 NFL. We're going to give you some previews, some raw and candid feedback on what's going on, and a little bit of recap of last week when we're talking about this week's games. We'll try to get about 5 games today. If you have any ideas or comments on the show, leave them in the comments section, and we'll be sure and respond to those comments if they're respectable. Arun, one thing I wanted to get out of the gate was, and I talked about it last week, and I want to get your reaction to the a couple of different numbers, not relying on games. I talked about last week the defense in the NFL is lacking. And as I did a little research today, I found out the average total in the NFL in week 1, if you added them all up and divided them, was 45.5. Coming into week 5, odds makers are catching on. It's up to 50.5 for the average total in the NFL. And you and I have been doing this a long time, Arun. I never thought I would see that. Obviously, they've made the rules more for an offensive-friendly game. But your reaction, a full 5-point adjustment across the board by odds makers with these totals heading into week 5.
Yeah, it kind of mirrors the NBA to me in some ways. It's like chicks dig the long ball in baseball, right? And then the NBA was just turned into a free-flowing 3-point shooting type. Remember back in the days when even when the Wallaces back in the Pistons and Larry Brown, those totals were like low 180s. Remember that? Like 183.5, stuff like that. You never see stuff like that anymore. Now it's like you see a total of 216, 217. You're like, oh, wow. Or even like 208. You're like, oh, wow, what a low-scoring total that is. So, first it was, baseball started hitting more long balls, and now you have the NBA, a lot more points, and now football's caught on too. And it's exciting, but you kind of miss the low scoring affairs. I will tell you this though, I bet you and we can do a 6-pack on this. I bet you most playoff games are going to go under though. I just think there's more game planning and blah, blah, blah. I think the playoff games will go under. I think the regular season games will probably go over, but you're right though. They've quote unquote caught up. So we'll see what happens. And I think the public is willing to take overs. Like on a total of 45, I think people want to almost auto over. They're just like, I'll take a shot because this is so high scoring these days.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I did my daily update on YouTube. By the way, Arun and I both do daily free play updates for you on the internet, along with my tribute to Edward Van Halen today. I picked up the guitar and did a little shredded on the video. But another thing that I talked about was the fact that college football underdogs, if you'd have bet the underdogs across the board blindly, every single underdog in college football, you sitting right now, you'd be 60.4% against the spread. I mean, there's just some, and of course, COVID has a lot to do with that, and a lot of unpredictability and a lot of big numbers based on public perception. But, I don't think we're going to see a Baltimore Ravens with a Trent Dilfer at quarterback win the Super Bowl anymore, strictly because of their defense. It's just not going to happen in today's world. And speaking of defense and lack thereof, I'm going to go right to IC's hometown to open up the conversation. That would be the Atlanta Falcons at home, current line -2 against Carolina. And interesting here, and I know they're your team, IC, but also I know your favorite team's whoever you got money on, just like me. At the end of the day, I'll fade Kansas City Chiefs or the Nebraska Cornhuskers quicker than you could drop a hot potato. But interesting, last year, right. Atlanta 2-0 against Carolina, 69-23 combined score, average win by 23 points per game. Atlanta coming off a short week. And the one thing I wanted to highlight was your insight last week, because I had a game on Arizona on Sunday, and it lost. And you had mentioned during the show last week how impressed you were with Matt Rule as head coach and the coaching job both him and his defensive coordinator have done. If you watched Baylor play this last weekend against West Virginia, you see how much they miss their defensive coordinator and Matt Rule in general. But at the end of the day, what a job they have done. Won 2 in a row. They've done it with smoke and mirrors, although last week they just flat out out-coached Kingsbury badly. I mean, that was just a bad coaching job by Cliff Kingsbury from Arizona. And with Matt Rule and his game plan, Teddy Bridgewater keeps covering spreads. He's a spread cover machine. Rule keeps coming up with game plans that win ball games. Here, it sure looks like a live dog on the road here to me, because Atlanta continuing to find ways to lose games, and short week, Arun, with travel, to Green Bay and back after getting they got kind of a behind the woodshed beating there at Green Bay. Interesting game here, divisional game for Atlanta, and you figure this is it, back against the wall, because right now your head coach down there in Atlanta is in the sweepstakes with Adam Gase to see who gets fired next.
Yeah, I follow Atlanta news pretty closely, being such a Falcons fan and stuff. So he's not going to get fired this week, but I do believe that if they lose this game, he might get the hook. And the Falcons, Arthur Blank is such a loyal, owner, whatnot, and I don't think he wants to make a change midway through the season. But at this point, if the Falcons start the season 0-5, they might as well be in the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes at this stage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, he's from Clemson, great for ticket sales, kind of a Southeast boy coming to Atlanta to come play and with this offense and go get a good defensive-minded coach and turn everything around. What I'm really impressed about Carolina is, a lot of people didn't know what kind of defensive coordinator Matt Rule would pick, but he picked his Baylor buddy. Phil Snow came over from Baylor with him, and they've been a great tandem, and they've done really well. And, I mean, I got to lean on Carolina. At the end of the day, I just trust this coaching staff, and Teddy Bridgewater is balling out. And their receivers, it's not like they had a ton of receivers. I mean, this team loses Christian McCaffrey, didn't skip a beat because the scheme is good, Tony. They have Miles Davis as the running back. They just plug him in. Matt Rule is the next Shanahan, who was the next who was the next Belichick, who was, Andy Reid. These guys have systems in place as long as you have athletes. And in the NFL, they're all athletes, right? Or else you can't play in pro football. They're all studs. They were studs in college. They were studs in high school and so on. So Matt Rule is an amazing coach, and he knows how to coach defense. He knows how to coach offense. He's just a better coach than Dan Quinn. And I love Dan Quinn, but part of the reason Dan Quinn succeeded was because he had Kyle Shanahan. Okay?
Yeah.
That was the year Matt Ryan won the MVP. So Dan Quinn's obviously overrated, and I like him as a person. He's obviously overrated here as a head coach. I think as a defensive coordinator, he'll be great, which is what the Packers did, right? The Packers have the former Cleveland Browns head coach, right? Patine, right? The bald-headed fella, and he's balling out. He's a great defensive coordinator for the Packers now for LaFleur. So I think Carolina has the better team. I think they have the better coach. I think they have the better scheme. So, did you ever imagine in the beginning of the season Carolina would be a +1 dog at Atlanta this season? I didn't. Yeah. I would have thought if I had to guess what that line was in the beginning of the season, I'd be like +4.5, +5.5, something like that.
Especially how Atlanta dominated them last year. And, of course, obviously they had quarterback issues last year and this, that, and the other. And that's why Ron Rivera lost his job. But at the end of the day here, I can only look at Carolina here. Total 54. I'll tell you what, might be a little bit of an overplay here as well. I think Atlanta's offense will play a little better than they did against Green Bay, but Green Bay had a hell of a game plan against them. L.A. Rams taking on the Washington Redskins. Haskins is out at quarterback, Arun. They're putting in Kyle Allen with Alex Smith. Believe it or not, if you watched any of those ESPN 60s or 30s, and I know you're close to the healthcare field as well. At the end of the day, the fact that he's even in an NFL uniform is just an amazing feat for him. But they're going with Kyle Allen here. They've had enough of Haskins. Rams, who didn't look that good last week. As a matter of fact, there wasn't any double-digit favorite last week that looked very good. FYI, read between the lines on that, folks. Double digits in the NFL is death to Smoochie. I can tell you that right now. But at the end of the day, the Rams on the road laying 7 here against a Washington team with a new quarterback. Does that give them an added spark or fire, do you think, Arun?
Well, you know my theory. I've always believed that a new quarterback comes in and gives a team extra juice or fire or whatever you want to say. And I think that's going to be the case here. And remember, we talked about it on our show that Ron Rivera called out Dwayne Haskins in his last game. He called him
Yeah.
out. He called him out in the Cleveland game, and no one ever thought he was going to give him the hook, but he gave him the hook. So I think that was kind of like, and Ron Rivera is such a straight shooter. I think he served in the military too. He's a straight shooter. I think he's basically said, I'm going to give you a shot. And I think now they've kind of moved on. So they're going to see what Kyle Allen has here. You know, I was impressed with the Redskins, right? One of our leans, if you remember, we talked about how the Ravens, Lamar Jackson probably bounces back offensively and blah, blah, blah. And that game goes over. They still hung tough. 31-17 is nothing to shy at, or whatever that score was. It was 31-17. They lost 20-34 to Cleveland. I actually lean on the under in this game, just because I think that that Ravens defense really showed up against the Rams defense really showed up against the Giants, held them to 9 points. I think what Washington's game plan is going to be not to put too much pressure on Allen. They're going to try to run that ball a lot. They're going to try to keep the Rams off the field, kind of like what the Giants did. So a small lean on the under. I don't think it's a bad idea to take a lean on the Redskins here, plus the 7. I think they'll kind of rally around the new quarterback. And the other thing is the Rams. Their next game is against San Francisco. They're probably already game planning for that game, and they're probably looking ahead a little bit too. So I would say my first lean would be on Washington, maybe also a smaller lean on the under right now. And obviously yours and my lean, Tony, can change given our daily video on Friday or Saturday too. You know what I mean?
Right.
But this is kind of like early thoughts in the beginning.
Yeah. Opening line report type thing here. And there's a great teaser for you this week. I'm a big teaser guy. 2-team 6-point teaser. You can get Carolina +8 and Washington +13. I mean, if they were that way on the board, Arun and I'd have a couple of 8 units out on those. So bear that in mind. I do agree with you on the under. And the one thing that Rivera likes to do, he's much like Bill Belichick. When he's in a big game or you have an issue with a quarterback like Belichick did on Monday, they like to run the football, pound the rock, and keep the other guy off the field. You know, the other team that has more capabilities than them off the field. The under, I actually had that circled, looking for premiums this early in the week. We'll see what the lines do. Hey, be sure and take a look above our beautiful heads there where it says get a free $60 account. Get over to DocSports.com this weekend. Get yourself hooked up with some great NFL handicappers. I see myself. We got 10 other great guys over there, a lot of them on big runs and have big play alerts over there. So take advantage of that free $60. We park it in your account if you've never been a member at Docs, and you won't be disappointed. So be sure and check out Doc Sports this weekend. Speaking of a game this weekend that has a lot of intrigue for me, and I'm gonna call you out. Because you've said on this show the last 3 weeks in a row how great of a coach Shanahan was. Well, Doug Peterson coached his ass off last Sunday night. Coached his ass out of the stadium. Carson Wentz running for his life. No semblance of any offensive balance. Nothing. And somehow Philadelphia still wins straight up in that football game. And now Philly on the road at Pittsburgh, who's had basically 2 weeks to get ready for this game, since their game last week with Tennessee was canceled due to COVID. And by the way, Tennessee, the news is here on Wednesday, 2 more players tested positive. Their facility is not open, which means they're probably the chances on a scale of 1 to 10 of them playing Buffalo anytime next week or this weekend is probably -20. Which pisses me off as a Chiefs fan, because now the Bills get 2 weeks to get ready to beat up on my Chiefs next Thursday night. I'm worried about that one. But nonetheless, Pittsburgh at home laying 7 against Philly. I don't think that Philadelphia is going to have the success they had against San Francisco in this game. Obviously, especially with Connors coming back, Big Ben healthy, lots of time to prep for this one. Philly walking into a little bit of the snake pit here. They're catching 7, total 44, Arun.
Yeah, it's interesting because these two teams actually haven't met since 2016. So it's been 4 years, and when Philly beat them 34-3. So Tomlin kind of remembers that loss too. I will say this though, I did lean on Philadelphia over San Fran. Shanahan's a great coach, but I did say that Carson Wentz was fighting for his life, and he's fighting for his
Yeah,
job, and he's likely to come through at one point. And plus in Shanahan's defense, he's got a backup quarterback. He doesn't really have his running backs either. He doesn't have Deebo Samuel either. Though I told you about Brandon Ayuk being a stud, and he's been coming through the last few weeks too. So Ayuk is a fantastic stud. As far as this game's concerned, it should be interesting to see if they get back Alshon Jeffrey for this game. He's listed as questionable, but he could come back for this game. And you have to be impressed with how the Steelers have played. They beat the Texans by 7 in a game the Texans had to win. They beat Denver by 5, but I don't hold it against them because Denver, again, lost to quarterbacks, and then they rallied behind Driscoll, Kumbaya, and then they made a comeback. They beat the Giants by 10. They're doing what they need to do. But how much is it more of the Eagles are good, or is it more of how bad do you have to be to have one win and still be basically near the top of your division? That's such a horrible, horrible division. But I think at the end of the day, you have to look at who is the better football team, and it's got to be the Steelers. So and I think you're going to get them at a good price because everybody thinks about that San Francisco game, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, this team still lost by 18 to the Rams and 10 to Washington. I don't trust the Eagles at all. And at the end of the day, you have to, this is a Pittsburgh team that can always rely on their defense, right? I mean, they held the Giants to 16, Denver to 21, Houston to 21. They can always rely on that defense. The Eagles haven't been that bad on the defensive side of the ball. Holding San Fran at 20 points is still pretty impressive. But I just don't think they're a disciplined football team. I don't think they're a disciplined football team. And I think this is the most success they've had all year. So how do you think they'll respond? Whereas the Steelers have been, I think the Steelers will get up for this game, especially I don't think the Steelers closed out well last game against Houston either. So I lean on Pittsburgh.
I agree with you there. And, don't get all worked up about Shanahan. You don't need to defend your integrity. I'm just busting your balls a little bit. But nonetheless, one thing I do agree on here, under 44 might be worth a look here too. Pittsburgh is going to obviously, Pittsburgh has a very underrated defense. It's been a couple weeks since we've seen it, but Pittsburgh has a very good defense. And the Eagles, Carson's going to be running for his life. The Eagles still have massive injury issues on their offensive line here, and I could easily see this being a 24/7 type ball game. Really could. I mean, that wouldn't surprise 24/7, maybe 10. At best, but I could easily see this going under the total. One game that's never going to go under the total usually, and that's going to be any game involving Cleveland.
And Tony, I'll just say this: you bring up a great point on Pittsburgh. Number one, they come off a bye. Number two, they've had 15 sacks so far this year, not to mention 4 interceptions. So you're talking about a team that's got 19 turnovers in 3 games. I'm sorry, not turnovers, but 19 negative plays, if you will, between. There's only so many plays you get in a football game. And if you're causing either 15 sacks or 4 interceptions, 19 negative plays, on average, you're causing 6 negative plays. That's almost a drive and a half. That's basically 2 full drives. They're going backwards. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, the more possessions you limit Philly to, the less they're going to score. That's for damn sure with any team, but especially Philly. You mentioned that division, the NFC East. They are leading the division at 1-2-1. I mean, when Philadelphia's leading the division, something's gone awry. And one thing that went awry and has gone awry, and I'm not going to talk about the Cowboy Giants game. I'm going to talk about the Cleveland Indy game. But Cleveland had a field day against what I feel in terms of the Dallas Cowboys, maybe the worst defense I've seen in the NFL in 10 years. I've been at this 28 years professionally, at least in the last 10 years. Now, given some time, I might be able to come up with some equals, but not very many. And bear in mind that Dallas has the number 1 offense in the NFL. But nonetheless, Cleveland goes down there and lights them up like a Christmas tree at Rockefeller Plaza. The Colts proved last week there was a question mark for me with the Indianapolis Colts, I see, and that was a number 1 ranked defense overall in the NFL, but they really hadn't played anybody. And I'm not saying the Chicago Bears are anybody, but we all saw what they did when Foles got in against Atlanta. Again, that's Atlanta, crapping down their leg, taking a crap on the 50-yard line late in the ball game and giving it away. I get that. But they proved last week, and I had a big play on the under on that one for my premiums. 19-11 ball game. Colts were efficient offensively, although they didn't put up a lot of points. Give it to Chicago. They've got a good defense there. They got Mack running around and some playmakers. But interesting here, odds makers love Indianapolis. They're begging you to take Cleveland here. They're a 1.5-point home underdog. Your reaction to that, and I'm going to go ahead and pull up my Don Best live odds here. The total right now, it is still Colts minus 1.5. They opened up at 2.5, so you had some early money come in on Indianapolis. The total's from 46.5, the open, down to 45. I even see a 47 at DraftKings right now. Your thoughts on this game, Arun?
Well, I told you how much I like Indianapolis in general. And I mentioned that the only person that knows Nick Foles better than Nick Foles is Frank Reich, because Frank Reich coached him to the Super Bowl championship. So he knew him really well. They held the Bears to 11 points, and anybody who beats the Bears gets my respect, because I think Nagy does more with less than anyone else in the league. I mean, he's got nobody, and he's just a brilliant coach. So he gets my respect. I'm really high on the Colts. I've been high on the Colts all year. It's amazing because Phillip Rivers throws only for 200 yards. And it's just all coaching, man. Reich is such a good coach, and he was brilliant back when he was even with the Bills. You know what I mean? When he was actually a player, he's just an excellent coach. That defense is really. If you're looking for a defense pickup, take a look at Indianapolis this week, because with Cleveland coming off such a big win, they're in for a likely letdown. And this is a Colts defense, like you talked about. Yeah, they gave up 27 to Jacksonville in the beginning, but then 11 to Minnesota, 7 to the Jets, 11 to Chicago. It's a team that's got 7 interceptions and 6 sacks. So you're talking about 13 negative, not to mention 2 defensive touchdowns too. Very opportunistic defense. In a way, they kind of remind me of the old Ravens. They're not asking Phillip Rivers to throw for 400 yards. He's throwing for basically 200 yards. They're pounding the ball. They got a couple of young receivers, and they're just doing it through just good quality ball control and playing good defense. I think the Browns have a letdown here, man. I lean on the Colts.
There you go. This is going to be a yes or no answer. We're going to keep this at 30 minutes today. I'm actually timing us today. Speaking of the Jets, they're starting Joe Flacco. Darnold got beat up last game. I'm surprised he even walked off the field. People are down on Sam Darnold. I'm not down on him. He's got no offensive line and no run game, and teams are teeing off on him, and he performs about as well as anybody could in that situation. He's a tough kid. He's a lot better than advertised based on what he has around him, which is nothing. That being said, just a yes or no answer, because I'm pissed off at the Cardinals this week. Pissed off. This is going to be in a lot of survivor pools this week. Arizona over New York. Can they cover 6.5, 7 in that game, Arun? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah. There we go.
And I'll just say this. I'll just say this. If you're Arizona and you don't show up this game, you can just pretty much kiss the playoffs goodbye. Like, this is a must win. So that's about it.
Yeah, and Kingsbury just – Kingsbury, I just want to lean in the mic. Get your head out of your ass. Come on, coach better than that. That defense last week looked like a monkey humping a football. I never seen nothing like it in my life. I've never seen a team more unprepared to play a football game last week than what the Arizona Cardinals were. I mean, just completely unprepared. I've never seen anything like it. Quickly here, Las Vegas, Kansas City minus 13. If Las Vegas wants to save their season, they need to win this game. I don't know if they can win this game against Kansas City, but the number is 13, Arun. A lot of points for a divisional ball game. Obviously, Las Vegas has some issues, although bear in mind, though they got beat last week, it ended up being a 7-point ball game. It wasn't that close, actually, but Buffalo's one of the top 5 or 6 teams in the league right now, in my opinion. And now they're turning around playing maybe arguably the best team in the NFL. Divisional game, Kansas City off a short week. And bear in mind, Kansas City's had back-to-backs against the Ravens and the Patriots in 2 huge national marquee games. Now, a little bit of a letdown spot, possibly for Kansas City here. Obviously, Arun, you and I both know handicapping these games for a living for a combined 40 years together. If you put all the experience together, that if Team A overlooks Team B in the NFL, Team A is going to get their ass handed to them. So, and Andy Reid's a very good football coach, but going to be kind of hard for Kansas City to get up for Las Vegas here after 2 games like Baltimore and New England, especially on a short week here.
Yeah, I mean the lean definitely has to be on Vegas, given the fact they've really struggled lately, and they come off back-to-back losses too. But the thing is that I can't go against your Chiefs, man. The Chiefs always seem to cover every game. Every game. What are they, 9-1-1? I mean, they are just a money minting machine. But having said all that, I do kind of lean on the Vegas only because they lost 40-9 last year. And that was a really ugly loss that they took to them. It's still a divisional game. It's still a battle. Carr needs to show. I actually think if Carr doesn't make this a competitive game, I think Mariota will start the following week. Because at that point, Arun's going to be like, well, we're 2-3. Why not give Marcus a shot now, given how much Carr is struggling? So, I think this is a kind of a now or never game for Carr, and I think he knows that. I think he knows that if he doesn't, here's the other thing too. Justin Herbert took the Chiefs to the limit. So it's going to look pretty bad if Carr doesn't have a competitive contest here. It makes it look like he's regressing almost, So, just by nature, we have to take Vegas here, but it's hard to go against the Chiefs, who just seem to always cover every line.
Well, here's the bad news for everybody. The Kansas City Chiefs got into a low-scoring, grinded-out physical football game against the New England Patriots, and they beat them and covered a huge number. That tells you all you need to know about Kansas City. Kansas City's defense is the thing that's overlooked, and I said it last week. I said it last year after the Super Bowl. Mahomes, Kelsey, Hill, whoever, Sammy Watkins, Hardman, they didn't win the Super Bowl. Their defense won the Super Bowl for them in the fourth quarter. Their defense won that Super Bowl. Their defense won the game and they proved we can get into a low-scoring, knock them, punch you right in the mouth type game, physical, black and blue ball game. We can still beat you, and that's because of Kansas City's defense. And the fact that defense is that good, Spagnuolo, he's been around the league forever, head coach and defensive coordinator all over the place, got a lot of experience. You got a hell of a lot of coaching experience there for Kansas City, and I think Gruden's going to get outmatched here. But again, anybody who knows me, probably Kansas City and Pittsburgh are going to be the two most, and maybe Arizona, the 3 most teased teams this week in the NFL. And might very well happen. Quickly on Monday Night Football, you brought up Los Angeles Chargers. You brought up Herbert, who's done well. He's made some good throws. I think the star at Cincinnati, Burrow, made some great throws. He's doing – these 2 guys as rookies are doing very good things right now in the NFL. New Orleans came out of nowhere last week, down 14-0. This is the Monday night game. Chargers taking on the Saints. Obviously, New Orleans overcame that double-digit deficit and turned it on and finally got their offense clicking. Chargers, I don't know. I can't trust Anthony Lynn in any game. But New Orleans now asked to lay 7.5 points in this ball game here. And the updated total in this ball game here is 51. It opened up at 50. Your thoughts on Monday Night Football real quick?
I mean, my early lean is going to be on the Saints, and that's only because I think at some point their defense is going to bust through. And they're so bad on defense right now. And Peyton has talked about how much that they literally can't stop anybody right now. I mean, they gave up 23 to Tampa Bay early on, but that's only because it was Brady's first game. Then 34 to Vegas. How horrible was that? Then 37 in Green Bay, and then 29 to Detroit. I think they are getting better on defense, though. And I think that they're going to put a really difficult game plan for a rookie quarterback. And I think he'll find it difficult. I mean, he looked great against Tampa Bay. But Tampa Bay's defense is not that good. And he looked pretty good against Carolina, but that's only because Carolina probably should have scored a lot more points than they did. And that was their first game without McCaffrey, too. There, at some point, the Saints are going to break down. And if they play like the second half of what they did against Detroit, this could get ugly, actually, pretty fast.
Yeah, I agree.
And by the way,
and
Michael Thomas is back for this game, too, supposedly.
yeah,
So.
yeah, that's like Breeze's pacifier. That's like the security blanket for Drew Brees. Ladies and gentlemen, that's this week's show. I'm taping right at 30 minutes. I got the clock running. We're going to keep it to a half hour. That's how good Arun and I are. I would lean a little bit under in the Monday Night Football game, perhaps too. I think maybe the Chargers have a good defense.
They do.
No doubt about it.
Look what they did against the Chiefs. I mean, they were great against the Chiefs, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's all you need to know right there. And Mahomes is a better quarterback than Brees is right now, although Drew Brees is, we'll see how the year ends for him. But obviously, not a knock on Drew Brees. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer and an absolute freaking stud overachiever. But at the end of the day here, I think this is going to be a more physical game on Monday Night Football than a lot of people think it's going to be. Put it that way. His name is Indian Cowboy Arun Shiva, and he is at DocSports.com. And I am Tony George. We're both at Doc Sports. We got a free $60 waiting for you. I know Arun's going to have a big college and pro football card this weekend, along with everything else. And quickly, before we go off the air, now I'm going to extend it for an extra minute. Your thoughts in the WNBA on Seattle just beating the dog piss out of the Las Vegas Aces. I had them. I was worried about laying the 8 yesterday, so I took Seattle on the first half line, thinking, maybe Las Vegas will show up. Hell of the year by the Seattle Storm, the WNBA. I know you're maybe one of Doc's, if not the best WNBA handicapper over at Doc's, Arun.
Yeah, man, it's I'm really happy for Seattle, and this could be the next big dynasty, to be honest. I mean, Sue Bird is 40 years old, and she's balling out, and they got Breanna Stewart, and they got so much young talent. We ended the season on 11-3 run for 3 straight winning years, but Seattle is going to be a team that's going to be good for a long one. It's a shame because I think Connecticut was better than Vegas, and Connecticut would have given Seattle a real run for their money. It's unfortunate that Vegas, with their old and tired legs, ended up winning that series. It would have been, but in Vegas's defense, they didn't have Hamby, they didn't have their Australian goddess, Cambridge, so they were missing some key players. But happy for Seattle. And I think they're going to be good for a long time. I actually hope the WNBA expands its league too by 2 more teams. I think that'll be fun too. And it's nice, right? Because you had 2 teams out in the West. Because there, it doesn't matter if you're West or East, right? They let everybody, based on the wins or loss in the seedings, anybody can play anybody. And I actually wish the NBA kind of does that, or baseball does that. I think that'll be fun.
Yeah, well, that's it, folks. WNBA, don't forget Major League Baseball playoffs underway. We got college and pro football. NBA finals ongoing. Miami, the team that won't go away, and I don't blame them. They're putting up a dogfight here, down 3-1. It's going to be a great weekend in sports. DocSports.com. Come over and visit us.